Colby Hall is here, founding editor at Mediaite, unbiased resident philosopher. It's almost like some media organizations have been shamed into now covering the age issue because it was so apparent and so in their face.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the story had a certain amount of gravity, but I think there was a lot of evidence to this. I mean, you couldn't not watch Biden age in real time. And I think there's a reluctance to be sort of overtly political about something. You know, we love to cherish, respect the elders, but it got to a point where anyone anecdotally could watch him and see that he really has lost his fastball and lost a step or two. And so I wrote a column saying, can we talk about his age without being ageist? And I think there's a way to do that. And it reminds me of the John Fetterman story. The ability to serve is right there in the wheelhouse when it comes to his mental acuity.
Yeah, and mental acuity, physical fitness issues. And I think we're going to see this only sort of come out over the next, 16 months or so in terms of what his campaign schedule and everything else is. But how long until there are parts of the Hunter Biden story that are going to have to be covered, even by the New York Times? The New York Times is going to sit there and think, to quote we're going to be on the wrong side of history if we don't cover this, if we continue to ignore a scandal involving the President of the United States and his son, that we're going to then have our own journalistic credibility called into question.
Well, I suspect that we're on sort of other sides of this. I think the moment that there's actual evidence and not sort of unverified allegations is when it becomes a real story that's handled and treated by respected journalists. I don't think we've arrived at that point. I think Hunter Biden has done a lot of unethical things, and the illegal things he has done and is being charged with don't really relate to Joe Biden.
Right.
I do think that you're right to point out that the shifting story from the White House certainly sort of brings more smoke to a story where they're insisting that there is no fire. The story today broke that there was a conference call, speakerphone call between Hunter Biden, Burisma executives, and Joe Biden, and it was like, aha! But it happened after he was vice president, before he decided to run for, and the details are that he exchanged vague pleasantries. And I don't know if that's enough yet. I do think it will start to get more coverage because I think.
Well, but there was a time when, hey, he just confused Putin in Ukraine once. Hey, this isn't a big deal about the age issue. And now all of a sudden there's this sort of mountain of evidence about the age issue that can't be ignored.
Correct.
It feels like you're saying we're getting closer to that with the Hunter Biden story.
Well, I mean, we keep hearing about the other shoe to drop, and we have James Comer on conservative media outlets every day, multiple times, talking about how there's this big conspiracy, but even opinion hosts on the right are saying, but where is the evidence?
Right, no, it's like the UFO story. We're going to get to that later with Bill O'Reilly, but it's like the UFO story. Like, okay, give me the evidence. Show me something.
I want to see the thing.
I want to see the thing. Look, we've discussed this a lot in terms of a double standard. Why do you think there is not a concern? You think about the story about Ukraine, and Ukraine oftentimes is forgotten. The first impeachment of President Trump was over Ukraine and over the issues of corruption in relating to this very thing. It seems as though there's a lot less scrutiny of Joe Biden's business dealings dealing with Ukraine, Hunter Biden's dealings with Ukraine, than there were Donald Trump. And we know that Hunter Biden got millions of dollars from Ukraine.
Well, him getting millions of dollars from Ukraine through Burisma is a joke. I don't know if it's illegal. I have a weird pet theory about the reason we don't spend too much time on it. It's like reading.
We love pet theories.
It's like reading Brothers Karamazov. It's hard to keep all of these Ukrainian names straight. You read the story of who was aligned with Biden and who was aligned with Trump, and it's very difficult to keep the characters straight. And I know that sounds sort of pedestrian, but I think that resonates.
We actually spent a long time today trying to think about how to make a graphic to illustrate all of the connections and what the allegations are. It's hard to explain. Part of this is just the Rorschach test, right, of how you view things. But this broke today. I don't know, did you see the National Review headline? Harvard's Mark Tushnet wants Joe Biden to become a dictator. We urge President Biden, this is a Harvard professor, to restrain MAGA justices immediately by announcing that if and when they issue rulings that are based on gravely mistaken interpretations of the Constitution that undermine our most fundamental commitments, the administration will be guided by its own constitutional interpretations. If we just change that around a little bit.
It's nuts. I mean, it just, and I have to say that, again, I go to this idea that, like, the Constitution was written in a sort of pre-psychological point of view world where there was such thing as objective truths. And now everything is up for interpretation. And so what he is arguing is no different than the activist judge allegation that we've heard from the right forever. And both sides are equally true and false. I mean, what he's saying is that we should have there's no point for a constitution if it's just populist. It's silly and absurd and should be rejected. But again, it gets to this point of like, well, let's just take the temperature of the people and let them decide what should be constitutional.
Back in the day when the rule book mattered.
Right.
All right, Colby.
Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you, sir. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.